Alright, how's everybody doing this evening? Back again on another video for you guys and gals. And tonight what I have for everyone is my full review of the Essential Phone PH1. So, y'all know how the story goes, or maybe you're new to the channel, but pretty much how my review process goes is I shoot the unboxing and first impressions for you guys, then I use the device so I feel like I got a handle on everything I want to talk about for you guys, and then it's full review time. So, without further ado, let's jump into this full review. So, the first thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall build quality and design of this device right here. Now, in terms of the overall build quality and design, from a build quality standpoint, I feel like Essential did a great job. Now, there's no rattling or creaking of any kind. All of the buttons give you a nice solid and reassuring click and feedback, and everything just feels very solid in the hands. So in terms of overall build quality, Essential did a great job. Now, talking about the overall design, again, you're going to hear more of the same. From a design standpoint, I feel like Essential went with a bare minimum with glass and ceramic and metal design. So everything is exactly where it should be, and nothing is out of place, and it just looks very sleek. It's like that sexy conservative approach. I feel like that's the approach that Essential went with when they were designing the Essential PH1. So what you can do is you can call this sexy conservative. Yeah, I like that. So in terms of the overall design, again, I think Essential did a really good job with the design of this device. Okay, so overall, putting both of those into perspective, overall the build quality and design of this device is really, really good. Up next now, the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall screen and display. So up front, dead center here, we have a 5.7-inch 1312 by 2560 display. So not quite 4K display, because a 4K display or quad HD display, my mistake, is 1440 by 2560. That's the standard quad HD display. So this one falls a little bit short at 1312 by 2560. But I know there are some of you guys that like to see the numbers, so let me go ahead and pull it up for you. So as you can see right there, again, the resolution is 1312 by 2560, and the screen density is 504 dpi, or pixels per inch. But putting the numbers aside and talking about this display in terms of day-to-day usage, I have to say that this is a really, really good display. Now, when I'm at home in the house, I tend to keep this display anywhere between 10% brightness and 25% brightness. And when I go out on the street and I do my day-to-day activities, then I might crank this guy up to about 50%. But that being said, in terms of display, I haven't had any issues, and Essential, they picked a nice quality display for this device, so this display is really, really good. Okay? Up next now, let's talk about the overall hardware and software in this device. Start off with the hardware. Hardware-wise, this guy is packing 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Now, out of the box, after setup, you're looking more like 116. So, 128 minus a little bit for the operating system, you got 116. Okay? But that being said, this guy has 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of onboard storage. No micro SD card expansion. This guy has a built-in 3040 milliamp hour battery. Okay? Other hardware includes this guy is packing a Snapdragon 835 octa-core processor and an Adreno 540 GPU. On the rear here, I don't know how well you guys can see it, but we have dual 13 megapixel cameras, one primary sensor, and one monochrome sensor. The primary sensor can shoot at 4K at 30 frames, 1080p 60, and 720p 30, and 720p 120 frames per second slow motion. Then we have our laser autofocus and LED flash, got our microphone, and we got our pogo pins for the modules, and our fingerprint sensor. Okay? Now at the time of the recording of this video, in terms of module support, we only have the 360 camera. But Essential is in the works for a wireless charging mod and a few others. The only one I'm really excited about is that wireless charging mod, but they will have a few others on the market. But again, as of the recording of this video, the only one available is the 360 camera. Alright? And now, talking about the fingerprint sensor, I have to tell you guys, it is really, really good. So let me demo it here for you guys. Just have to tap on it, you get a nice haptic feedback, and it pops right open. And this fingerprint sensor is just going to work. Your hands could be a little wet, still going to work. You can have a little bit of food on them, still going to work. And it's going to work 9 out of 10 times, and I haven't had any issues with the fingerprint sensor and overall performance when we talk about the fingerprint sensor. Now, moving on, more hardware. Up front, dead center here, we have that 5.7-inch display, as I said already, and then we have an 8 megapixel camera, which is capable of recording 4K at 30 frames and 720p 30 video. And spoiler, the cameras on this device are capable of taking some really good photos and some really good video. But we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. But that pretty much does it for the hardware. Now, in terms of software, this guy is pretty much running a stock, bare bones build of Android 7.1.1 Nougat. And if you guys checked out my unboxing video, this guy came with the bare essentials. No pun intended. It just came with the stock core Google apps, and that was it. No bloatware. So everything you see on this device are things that I loaded up on this device, and I set this device up exactly the way I like it. Okay? But that being said, in terms of features, the only real features that Essential has included in this guy are a few key gestures. Okay? Now, in terms of gestures, they have the one that I've been using throughout this video already. They have the fingerprint sensor notification pull down gesture. So you just swipe down on the fingerprint sensor and it's going to pull down your notification shade. Okay? Then they have the double tap of the power button from any screen to launch into the camera. So you can see, take you right in, ba-bam, and we in there. Okay? And then they have something akin to always on display, and they call it lift to check phone, but it's something more like an always on display. And pretty much if you receive a notification or your phone senses motion, it's going to light up and show everything to you in a monochrome fashion, and then you can tap on it to interact with it. So let's see here. If I just do it like this. Alright, didn't really do it that time, but you can see right there, and then I could tap to interact with these, so on and so forth. So similar to your always on display or your ambient display for the Google devices, it's really good stuff, and I find that these features, they really do come in handy. But other than that, you're running a pretty much stock version of Android 7.1.1 Nougat. And I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. Now, talking about the software from a day-to-day performance standpoint, I have to say I haven't had any issues with the software. Aside from the memory management on this device, in my opinion, is a little bit aggressive. Now, on average, the most that I could run on this guy is probably about 14 to 15 apps. After that, the Essential phone starts to aggressively close out or refresh the apps. So if there was any one particular gripe that I had with this device, aside from the occasional random crashes that I was getting, but that was only when I was running my multitasking benchmark. But it did crash and I had to hard reset it a few times. But other than that, that aggressive memory management are the only two downsides to the software that I have with this device. So if Essential comes across my video, y'all need to release an update and cut back on that a little bit. You got 4 gigs of RAM. Take it easy. You don't have to be so aggressive, okay? But other than that, in terms of day-to-day performance with the software, it has been an overall enjoyable experience. Now, y'all already know what I'm going to say. With the occasional app slowdown. And that only happens when you have a bunch of apps open in the background. Now, this is a flagship device, and that's going to happen over time. Hasn't really happened yet, but it will happen over time. But other than that, the overall software from a day-to-day performance standpoint has been really, really good. Up next now, let's talk about the Wi-Fi in this guy. Now, in particular, when we talk about the Wi-Fi, this guy has support for Wi-Fi 802.11, BGNN, and AC dual-band Wi-Fi. So what does that mean? That means that this guy has support for your 2.4 gigahertz band and your 5 gigahertz band Wi-Fi if you have a router that supports that. And in terms of the overall Wi-Fi performance on a daily basis, I have to say I haven't had any issues with the Wi-Fi and any issues with the data as well. And I've used this guy on T-Mobile's network and on Straight Talk's network, which runs on the Verizon network. And I haven't had any issues in terms of the Wi-Fi or the data. But I did find, and I just want to point this out, that the Wi-Fi to data handoff can be a little wonky. Okay? I've read up on some reviews, and a lot of people were saying that it can be a little wonky and sometimes it doesn't catch, so on and so forth. And I've experienced that issue maybe like once or twice. But one of the ways that you can fix that is you can navigate to your cellular networks settings in the settings menu and go to preferred networks. And if you know your carrier supported bands and you know what it supports, so whether it be GSM, LTE, WCDMA, CDMA, so on and so forth, you can adjust the Essential phone or force the Essential phone to work on just those bands. So you can tweak that handoff problem just by jumping in here and tweaking your preferred settings. Now, I was running it on all of them, but I found toggling it between all of them and global pretty much cuts down on that wonky Wi-Fi handoff issue. And I really think that that's a software issue. So again, Essential, if you come across my videos, y'all need to release an update and handle that. But other than that, the overall Wi-Fi and data performance on this device has been really, really good. But that's enough talk. I know what y'all came for. Y'all want to see an actual Wi-Fi performance test. So, got this video loaded up. This is also going to double as a speaker test. So I'm going to crank out the volume and I'm going to let it play. Going to scrub through it so y'all can see how the Wi-Fi performs. Then we're going to talk about the speakers and we're going to keep it moving. So enjoy, guys and gals. Alright, so there you go. Real quick Wi-Fi test, real quick speaker test. And I gotta tell you guys again, in terms of the Wi-Fi, I haven't had any issues. Now, in terms of the speakers, I found that these speakers overall get very loud, crisp, and clear, but they are lacking a little bit in the bass department. Other than that, I'm not really feeling the placement of these speakers. Y'all know me, I'm a big advocate for front-firing speakers, and these are down-firing, which means that they're really easy to muffle, and I already demoed it in the video. Not my favorite placement for the speakers, and overall, they're just lacking in the bass department, but they still get very loud, crisp, and clear. So that pretty much does it for the Wi-Fi and the overall speaker performance. Now let's keep it moving, and let's talk about the bands supported in this guy, in particular the LTE bands supported in this guy. Now, when we talk about the band support, this is a globally unlocked device. So what does that mean? This will work on all of the major United States carriers and all GSM carriers abroad, and so on and so forth. But in particular, when we talk about the bands, the only bands I'm going to talk about with you guys are the LTE bands. So if your carrier supports any or all of these LTE bands, you shouldn't have any issues in terms of LTE coverage, whether it be for call quality or data. You shouldn't have any issues as long as your carrier supports the following LTE bands. So in particular, when we talk about the LTE bands, we're talking about bands 1 through 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, 17, 20, 21, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 66. So if your carrier supports any or all of those bands, you should be good to go. And I really am enjoying this device for the bands itself. I can pretty much drop any SIM in here and it should be good to go. Okay, it's very plug and play, similar to my Moto X Pure Edition. Alright, so that pretty much does it for the bands. Now let's talk about the overall Bluetooth performance. Now, in terms of the Bluetooth on this guy supports Bluetooth 5.0 technology, and I gotta tell you guys, I haven't had any issues with the built-in Bluetooth on this guy. It works, and I haven't had any issues. And here you can see a very small list of the devices that I've connected up to this phone so far. And this is actually a very small list. I've connected up more than this, but I just got rid of some of them. So when I get rid of them, I take them off the list. There's no point in having them saved to my device if I don't have them anymore. But in particular, when we talk about the Bluetooth performance, you're not going to have any issues, and I haven't had any issues. So the overall Bluetooth on this guy is really, really good. Up next now, the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall GPS performance on this guy. Now, in terms of the GPS, again, we have another solid device here. And in terms of the GPS performance, I haven't had any issues. Anything that had to do with using the GPS module worked without issue. The GPS locked on within seconds, and things like turn-by-turn navigation, which I rely heavily on, worked without a problem. So if you're very GPS dependent like myself, and you pick this guy up, you shouldn't have any issues. Okay? Up next now, the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall call quality and speaker call quality of this device. Now, across the board, I've pretty much found that whether it be with the built-in receiver or the external speaker, that this device performs extremely well. It gets very loud, crisp, and clear on both, but I just found, for my particular taste, I found that I wanted to get just a touch louder on each. I don't know if y'all know, but in older Samsung devices, they used to have a volume boost in the dialer, and you know, I find myself still wishing that a bunch of devices still supported that, because I found that I just wanted to get just a little bit more oomph out of it. But that being said, in terms of day-to-day performance with the call quality and speaker call quality, it's been pretty good. Pretty good indeed. Now, up next I want to talk about with you guys is the overall cameras on this guy and the overall camera interface. Now again, this guy has dual 13 megapixel cameras on the rear, one primary and one monochrome, and they can record 4K 30, 1080p 60, and 720p 30, and 720p 120 frames slow motion on the rear, and it can record 720p 30 on the front and 4K 30 on the front as well. Now, in particular, when we talk about the camera interface, I found that this one is very clean and very straightforward. So you got all of your quick settings down the side here, so you can quickly jump to the front camera. How you doing, guys? Okay, and then jump back. You got your timer controls here, so you got 2 seconds, 10 seconds, and off. You got your resolutions for video. So right now it's set to 720p 30. And you can see when I tap it, you get the nice 60. That's 1080p 60. Tap it again. That's 4K at 30 frames a second. Then you also have HDR support. So you got on, off, auto, so on and so forth. I just leave it in auto. It seems to do a pretty good job by itself. Then you got your flash controls. Again, on, off, auto. And again, I just leave it in auto. It seems to do a pretty good job. And then you got your settings. And this one's a little bit weird to me. So as you can see in your camera settings, you have your shutter sound. You got your storage location. I don't understand why that one's there, because this guy doesn't have micro SD card expansion. So you just have internal storage. So that's kind of pointless. Then you got your grid lines. Okay? So you got your 4:3. You got your golden ratio. And you got your 3:3, or you could turn it off altogether. Tend to leave it on 3:3. It helps. And that's pretty much it for the settings. Now, across the bottom here, we have all of our modes. So we got auto, we got portrait mode, and the portrait mode on this guy is pretty good. Got mad photo samples. The photo samples will be available on Google+, so check them out. Then we got mono mode. This guy takes some really, really good black and white photos. Really good stuff. Then we got slow motion, which is, again, 120 frames per second, 720p video, and it's really, really good. Now, I found that you don't have any zoom controls with the slow motion, and I kind of wish you had that. But other than that, the slow motion on this guy is really, really good. So, taking it back to auto, let me just tap on that here, and jump into the front. You see, we have all of the same controls on the front-facing camera as we do on the rear. So you can switch. You got your timer. You got your resolutions. In this case, 720p and 4K. As you see right there, got your HDR. Right now it's set to auto. Now, where it's a little bit tricky is across the bottom, you still see your modes. Now, those modes only work with the primary rear-firing camera. So if I tap on portrait mode, it's going to kick me back to the rear. Okay? Let me go back to auto here. And if I tap on monochrome, it's going to kick me back to the rear again. So on and so forth. And the same thing with the slow motion. It's all done with the rear. So, at least for me, I felt like they could have grayed them all out with the front-facing camera and just left auto, or did something to, make it so you know that these don't work with the front-facing camera, but it is what it is. Okay? So, that pretty much covers the camera interface. Now, talking about the camera performance as a whole, again, you're going to be able to take some really good photos and some really good videos with this device overall. regardless of what type of photo you're taking or what resolution video you're taking, you're going to get some really good photos and videos out of this guide. Trust me. Now, in the interest of speed, I didn't show you guys any video samples. I didn't show you guys any photo samples. All of the video samples are available on my video samples playlist on YouTube. You'll be able to find links to all that stuff down below, as well as links to all of the photo samples, which I share on Google+. Again, I have links to that down below in the video description. But again, in terms of cameras, we got some really good cameras on this device here. Now, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the gaming on this guy. And in particular with the gaming, I'm pretty much a casual gamer, but I did test games like, as you can see here, Subway Surfer, Fruit Ninja, Asphalt 8, Modern Combat, Asphalt Extreme, and this game handled them without issue. I even tested Mortal Kombat X, and it handled them without issue. Now, I did find that with extended gameplay sessions, anything over half an hour, the back of the device did get quite warm. I don't really know what the issue is there, but I did find that in my particular testing, that did happen. Anytime I gamed for more than 20 minutes to half an hour, the back of the device did get quite warm. Alright? But other than that, the overall gaming performance on this device is really, really good, and you shouldn't have any issues. Alright, so next now, let's talk about the benchmarks on this guy. And pretty much this guy benchmarked where I was expecting it to, because it's got the latest and greatest Snapdragon 835 and Adreno 540. Well, scratch that. I guess it's not the latest and greatest anymore. With NWC around the corner and the latest and greatest Galaxy devices set to be announced at NWC, this isn't really the latest and greatest anymore. But this was the latest and greatest for 2017, and this chipset performs as expected. So you can see in the Ice Storm Unlimited test, we scored a 40,911, which is really, really good. In the Antutu benchmark, we scored a 186,259, which is top notch for Antutu. Top notch. Jumping over, you can see in the Geekbench 4, we scored a 1925 on the single core and a 6,524 on the multi-core. And you guys can see that it is running Nougat again, and it does have 4 gigs of RAM. The system has to take a little bit, so that's why you see it says 3.63, but it is really 4 gigs of RAM. Okay? Really good stuff there. Now, these are a little bit older benchmarks, but I still included them because I like the way that these benchmarks tax the system and then spit out an overall score. So this is the Volemo metal test, and you can see the Essential Phone scored a 3,490, which pretty much put it at the top of the pack. And then we got the Volemo multi-core test, and again, the Essential Phone scored a 3,377, again at the top of the pack. So really good stuff. Now, this is where I was a little sad. A little sad indeed. Now, this is the DiscoMark multitasking benchmark, and the way this works is you can pretty much select any app you want, and this benchmark will cycle through those apps and then spit out an average total time that your device took to get through all of those apps. And this is where I was experiencing a lot of device freezing and a lot of crashes was with this device. And you can see when it did run, I got a really bad time. So in particular with this benchmark, it took on average 53.336 seconds to get through all of my apps. And these are all of the apps that I use on a daily basis. I think there's like 15 or 20 in total. And so that I was really disappointed to see that. But that pretty much does it for the benchmarks. Now let's keep it moving. up next now, the next thing I want to talk about with you guys is the overall battery life and the overall charge times. Now, in particular, when we talk about the battery life, I want you guys to keep in mind that I am a very, very heavy user. And if you're a light to moderate user, your results may vary, okay? But in my particular case, I'm a very heavy user, and these results will reflect that. So, as we jump into the screenshots here, you can see on this day, this is more of a moderate day. Screen was on 19% of the time, and you can see I got about 4 hours, 53 minutes. I could have easily pushed that to 5 hours. Okay, and you can see this is using the ampere benchmark, and this just measures the overall charge rate of the device. And you can see anything over 2100 milliamps is fast charging. So you guys can see that this device does support fast charging, and it did top out at 2530 milliamps. So that does support fast charging via the Type-C port. Now, jumping back into the screenshots, this was a heavier day, and you can see I got through the day with 11 hours of usage, and the screen was on 21% of the time.